they kept telling them, the Europeans and the Americans, the time is not right.
Right, and then suddenly, it's an interesting thing because it's sort of like you could call the two events of the last couple of weeks, it's a kind of a double revelation. In Gaza, Khalid Mishal suddenly had a revelation. The Israelis are afraid to launch a ground invasion. So he goes before an international news conference and he says, go ahead, invade. And of course, Netanyahu is now in a panic because they had this whole theater of calling up 75,000 troops, and every day they're making decision whether or not to attack. And suddenly he calls their bluff. And he says, go ahead, invade. And Netanyahu panics. He's now, the bluff has been called and he's exposed. And so he immediately calls the Americans, get us out of this, you have to bail us out. And the Hillary Clinton comes. So what happens now with Abbas? He suddenly has a revelation. His revelation is, we're the slaves, they're the slave masters, referring now to the Israelis and the Americans. And he suddenly realizes the slave masters need us as much as we need them. They're threatening that they're going to withhold funds, overthrow the Palestinian Authority, but then the Palestinians suddenly realize, yeah, and then what are you going to get? And it starts telling the Americans and telling the Israelis, you really don't want to see happen what will happen if we're not here. And then Obama starts telling the Israelis, no, don't take away their money, because there's a big problem if the Palestinian Authority collapses. And then he sees that now he's gaining the European support. And then he starts becoming, quite defiant, for the Palestinian Authority. He becomes quite defiant and confident that he could pull this off.
So he was emboldened by the victory in Gaza, in a way.
Oh yeah, well he was very emboldened. I mean, the whole Western, the Europeans, they did a turnaround. It was actually quite shocking to watch. They weren't going to get one single vote in the EU.
Okay, let's look at the actual resolution which was passed here at the United Nations. How do you read that resolution? Is it strong enough, matching the resilience that has been shown by the people of Palestine in their suffering and in their standing up to the Israeli military machinery?
Well, there's several things to say. First of all, if you look at the actual text of the resolution, it's not very different than the resolution they pass every year, the resolution called Peaceful Settlement of the Palestine Question, which is every year, November 29th, where they lay out the terms for resolving the conflict. So the resolution itself, the text of it, it's not much different. It's a little longer. Now these resolutions, they're becoming book size.